Hey,
Hi,
John.
mate.
How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
So, are you at home now? Are you touring?
I am at home. Yeah, no, I'm at home. I was working just Friday this week, actually in Burnley. So I was like, for me, if I'm local to home, I get really fixated on getting home before midnight. If I can get home before midnight, it's like, how people are like, wait, I guess people with regular jobs are maybe looking at the clock for 5 o'clock or something like that, count down the minutes. For me, because I enjoy the work, I'm not doing it. I'm not counting down the hours like that, but I'm definitely, if I get a chance to be home before midnight, it's like, oh my days. It's like working a half day or something. Brilliant.
Yeah, I was
But
having a
yeah,
look
I've
at
had.
your tour schedule. Like, it looks like you guys get about all over the
Oh,
place.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, all over the UK, but in previous years, we've obviously been fortunate enough to, get all over the world, really. Sort of COVID restrictions obviously put a bit of a dampener on that, which was, not the least frustrating thing about that 2 year period or whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to. I'm obviously I love getting around the country and stuff, and as I've got older, I've kind of sort of made a decision. 'Cause I spent so much of my time kind of traveling all around places, and you see inside a venue or you see inside a hotel, and realistically, you could be anywhere. Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's
yeah.
just hotel to gig to hotel, or so I kind of nowadays I make a kind of conscious decision to have a little wander around wherever, and it might be somewhere as unglamorous as Burnley. Not that I've got anything against Burnley, they don't live too far away. um, but just kind of making a point of going. I'll take a bit of a walk around. We went to Ireland last Christmas. Went to Belfast, and I've been before, but this was the time where I went. I've got a day here. I'm just going to go take a couple of hours and just wander around the city. And I kind of came away going, wow, what a really wicked city. I could kind of see myself living here. So it's a small bonus of what we do, really.
You obviously did the band thing, like you said, you toured the world on it, and then you did the session work, and now you're in the production.
Yeah,
And then obviously for like the audience, when I come and see a band, you think like it looks really glamorous. You're on stage, you're playing to all these people, and then you're traveling the world. Like, what's it really like? Like from your point of view, like you said, you're in a venue, you're in a hotel. It could be anywhere. You don't
yeah.
necessarily get to look around the city unless you make a point of it.
No, absolutely. So the very first tour manager that we ever had, basically the guy that drove us around in a split van before we had any kind of budget of significance. One of the things he'd always, Welsh guy Ryan, loved him to bits, but one of his sayings was, "Ooh, the glamour," and it's like that's really stuck with me. Like I still find myself saying that a lot. Um, I don't want to make it sound like, certainly not digging holes or, anything like that. But yeah, for your 2 hours that you're on stage, I definitely can see why people would think it's glamorous. And actually, I kind of want people to see it like that because it is a bit of an escape, for that short period of time. It's kind of getting away from. It's a suspension of reality, I think, for those 2 hours. So uh, I'm happy, and I would like people to kind of just perceive it as being the glamorous side of it. But the reality of it is, it could be 8 hours in a van, 8 hours in a car, getting to a gig, getting changed in what are they called? Um, like industrial so I remember doing a gig um, where we'll kind of, all right, okay, cool, where can we get changed? So they lead you outside and you're getting changed in an industrial container, the big corrugated.
Yeah.
Or like, I remember on one Glitterati tour, um, like really early days, being asked, or our tour manager trying to find us a dressing room, and basically there not being a dressing room, and him doing a bit of sweet talking and a bit of kind of political wranglings to find the dressing room. And as it turned out, we were told we could have the dressing room on the. I mean, I remember this because we took the piss. I can't remember if his exact words were the strict conditions or the strict proviso that there's no medical emergency. They gave us the first stage room to get changed in. So, like, you know, I think from kind of my side of it, the glamour's not necessarily. So the plus side of it is I did a New Year's Eve gig in Moscow, which was absolutely killer. And we were kind of like, you know, picked up from the hotel in nice cars and taken to the gig and like walked into this backstage dressing room where it was like caviar. I don't know what the next step down from caviar is, but I know there's like proper grade A caviar, and then there's the next one, not quite as glamorous fish that produce it. But there's like, I mean, I'm a musician, so for me, when I walk into a room, there's a large buffet there. I'm like, I'm good now, you know, everything's good. But you know, there's caviar and there's like loads of bottles of vodka and loads of bottles of beer. So sometimes you do get that kind of, you know, real grade A proper hospitality treatment. But the vast majority of it really is just you know, just functional dressing rooms. The actual backstage part, I think as anybody would expect, is kind of the shop window is nice, and the backstage is obviously where people yeah, it's less visible, so it's less glamorous as an indication of the lack of glamour that I expect nowadays. On Friday in Burnley, we were given free tea and coffee and packets of crisps, and I was like, I love this place, we should come back here. I'm a cheap date, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. But it's funny too, though, because nowadays, obviously, with social media and bands being expected, or any up and coming sort of performer, I guess, but the expectation to already have an audience for like labels to be interested and management to be interested. You see so much more of the behind the scenes stuff, like dressing rooms, and so I think a lot of it, you know, certainly when I was first listening to music, you saw only what was in the magazines.
Yeah, right.
They're already kind of established bands, and the PR teams going, no, we don't want that in there.
Yeah, and how do you feel about that? What's the how do you does it take the shine off nowadays?
The funny thing for me is at this particular moment in time, I haven't got a band that I feel particularly attached to.
Sure.
So, and I've done the local, so I've never been anywhere near kind of, you know, what you guys were doing, but I've done the local thing. So the fact you even mentioned dressing rooms, we didn't, you know, we had like a corner of the pub.
Yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely been there.
Yeah, and I think for me now as a player, and I watch other players, and I think, what are they doing? What's, you know, what are their hands doing? What's the thought process? There's a lot of value in that social media. Just like I can learn from that.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a fan. Like if I was, you know, when I was coming to your guys' gigs and stuff, I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah, okay.
But I think if I was like 15, 16, when I used to be reading magazines and, you know, seeing what the new bands are and stuff, I don't know. I think it might have taken that sheen off of what it
yeah,
really,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the,
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not the world's biggest Elvis fan at all, but I absolutely value and appreciate kind of the mystique around him. You know, I like the fact that he's kind of almost untouchable. It's that, you know, reaching for this icon kind of thing. And I think in a way, I mean, I personally feel like the bar is being dropped and dropped and dropped. And I'm sort of talking about, you know, you sort of average pop star. But I feel like the bar is dropped because, you know, we live in this kind of society where everything should be achievable and everything should be attainable. Now, if you put Elvis up on screen, that's not attainable for like 99.9% of the population. They just don't have whatever he had that made him Elvis, you know. But by dropping the bar, you can kind of go, well, that person's really average. As you know, that person's really average, and I'm really average. Wicked, I could be famous now, you know. And I just think, and maybe it's an age thing, or maybe it's a reverence for the music that I grew up loving. But I almost want these people to 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 occupy a different plane, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
you know, I grew up. So I was born in the 80s, so I grew up
Hmm.
properly in the 90s. So I'd missed all the classic rock era and all that, but it was still big in the public conscience by the time I was, reading stuff. So like
Sure.
I used to read, um, the sort of you read about bands like Led Zeppelin, right? And it's just pure, almost mythology now.
Absolutely,
You talk
yeah.
about like Peter Green, and they got this manager who would throw people through windows and say, we're keeping 90% of the ticket sales, and you can take it or leave it. You think, and
Yeah.
all the stuff about the occult with that band, and the same with Black Sabbath and stuff. But those
Hmm.
bands, you kind of think it doesn't even matter if it's true. It's pure entertainment and value, and as you said, right, they're up there, and
Absolutely.
you're buying much more than the music at that point. And I think
I agree. Yeah.
nowadays it's more, it feels, I suppose on the one hand it feels more sterile. If I was being generous, I could say, oh, it's more real,
Yeah.
it's more
Okay.
relatable. But at what point is it like I said, I played the local scene with other bands, and that's fine. We had a good time and we got on with those other bands,
Hmm.
but there's no kind of veneer, right? So at what point for someone in that position do you think, well, that bigger band is just a bigger version of this? There's nothing special about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
it used to be like, wow, look what they're doing up
Oh,
there.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, I remember kind of way back in the day in Leeds before. I'm trying to think. It was Paul and Bill would have been in the band. I don't know if Nick would have been in the band yet, and Wolf certainly won. But I remember there used to be a venue in Leeds called the Duchess of York, which all the bands came, like Nirvana played there, Oasis played there. It was like the toilet tour venue in Leeds, and I remember we were really fortunate in that we kind of, because Paul and I were, we were there every week, just kind of going to watch sign bands coming through. So eventually the guy on the door recognizes the face and stuff. It's like, oh, we're in a band too, as you would expect. A million people had said to him. But we obviously managed to get some really, really good supports there. I think we supported Feeder at the Duchess, supported Stereophonics. Do you remember Three Colours Red?
Yeah,
I feel like we might have supported Three Colours Red there. So um, we kind of got to see that, the bands the that were at a level that we aspired to. Because I don't know if we ever realistically, do you aspire to be Guns N' Roses? That level of, I don't know. For us, it was just kind of being on the level of, and obviously Feeder went on to become, and Stefan's went on
yeah,
to become massive. But so kind of seeing those guys and sort of having the opportunity to play with them, um, I think in a way it almost it made it more feel like it was more achievable, more relatable, because actually those guys coming through were just regular guys, like really genuinely, really down to earth kind of, we're out on tour, trying to pick up fans, playing our song, kind of just a really relatable experience. It just happened to be that, they were out coming to gigs in a tour van, and our mums and dads were bringing us to the Duchess to play with them. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
it was still very kind of, there was no one a question of entourages, or I'm trying to think even then if any of those guys would have had guitar techs. I don't think they'd have had techs at that point, so it made it all very actually it's not, it don't feel like it's that big a leap up to kind of what, the level that those guys are playing at. But again,
yeah,
it was never, they didn't represent to us any kind of version of glamour that any reasonable human being could describe as glamour, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't think. I think if you're going into it with an expectation of a glamorous lifestyle, I think you're probably going to be really disappointed. You know, but equally, I think that, you know, certainly for me, and I don't know if we talked about this last time. I think we probably did, but you know, music was always going to be carried my great white hopes of being the vehicle that would take me out of my, like, you know, perfectly regular working class upbringing. Do you know what I mean? There's no slight there on my part, and you
Yeah,
know, there's nothing in that. It's just, I say it a lot in the same way that you know, a young poor kid in New York might think boxing's their way out.
yeah, right.
You know, it was just music for us. So I think because of our upbringings, we didn't really have that expectation of glamour, if you know what I mean. Maybe
Right.
if you're
Yeah.
coming from Italia Conti or one of the other dramatic arts kind of schools where maybe your education has somewhat been cosseted or privileged, maybe you know maybe you're more expecting and probably more likely to get a Dua Lipa-esque, you
But what
know.
about for you away from the touring? Because obviously you guys, so you're in the Glitterati and you
Mhm.
signed to Atlantic, right? You're
That's
on a
right, yeah.
big label, and
Hmm.
then you're in LA. You're recording with Mike Klink, who like you're a Guns N' Roses fans
Oh,
and stuff.
massive, yeah.
And then didn't you guys play like the Playboy? Was it the
We did no, we did a TV show called I want to say Night Calls or something like that, but it was Playboy TV.
Playboy TV?
Yeah, so we were the house band for the night, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
which I got to tell you was like just that in itself, like, you know, and actually with you now just mentioning it, I realised kind of that still pushes all my buttons. The idea of being in a house band, that kind of, you know, I know Bill had, you know, he was properly in the hot seat for that one because we're all just, you know, young men surrounded by, you know, ranging from nude to semi-nude Playboy bunnies, just and porn stars all around us. So like I'm just playing guitar, just going, this is brilliant. Looking around me, just going, oh, this is it. This is it. Whereas Bill kind of playing and he's got the director in his ear, you know, in his monitor going, right, you need to stop now. You know, like cue and endings, just like stop, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I thought we did a really good job of being a house band. And, you know, we hit all our cues and stuff like that. But as an experience,
Yeah, I mean, because
it
going,
was,
you're talking about like the social media and stuff. I feel like you guys were ever so slightly too early
yeah.
for like, the amount of videos that should be on YouTube from your gigs and stuff. And instead, I've got like phone videos of shows that look you can barely tell it's just some
Oh, yeah.
blurs on stage, you know, and that's a shame. But like, I think there is a video somewhere of you guys doing that Playboy
Oh,
TV.
it's definitely that's one of the few ones that you
Is
know.
it?
Depending on which social circles I'm sort of like inhabiting at a point. After a few beers, if it gets a bit saucy, then I might go, "Hey lads, have a look at this." You know,
But so
it's
what
one of
about all
the
that from a glamour point of view? You know, the being in LA, you're on a big label. I mean, did that match expectations? That if you had any expectations, like you said,
um
like music being the way out for you, the way kind of up,
yeah.
and then on paper at least, that must have ticked some boxes.
I mean, so I mean, certainly, yeah, we had like you know very glamorous experiences, or what you would classically consider to be very glamorous experiences. Obviously, the Playboy thing, but then it's even going to really being taken to really fancy restaurants, or like you know really super cool bars, or like you know we went to Clink's for Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving with his family. So like you know, and I'm a massive Star Wars fan. Like I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And I remember sitting with Clink for like, you know, a good half an hour with him just telling me that he's friends with Mark Hamill and like saying, do you want me to like, you know, sort you out? I could probably like, you know, give a meeting and me being me. It's like, no, you know, because I always sort of carried with me that I think I never wanted to feel like anybody was doing me a favor,
Yeah.
particularly people that I like. I don't like people to feel like I'm really hung up, and this is a direct thing of being my experiences with the Glitterati. I really, really hate it when I feel like somebody's either talking to you because they feel like you can hook them up with X, Y, or Z, or do X, Y, Z, or equally, I hate the idea that somebody thinks that I'm talking to them
Yeah.
just because that sort of trend. But certainly, the kind of the major label world that we kind of floated around in, for that period, a lot of relationships felt transactional to me, and I never really felt comfortable with that, and I don't know if that's because if there was a sort of a bit of an inferiority complex in there, and that I don't feel like I can offer you as much as you're offering me, kind of thing. But I never, I probably didn't take as many opportunities at that time as I possibly could have done. But
Mhm.
I didn't want to. Even now, I hate networking. I
Yeah.
absolutely, I hate it. I'd just rather, you know, quietly go about my business and kind of be recognized for quietly going about my business in a competent and professional way,
Yeah.
rather than being like, I'm amazing.
No, and that's the game now, isn't it? I mean, like we said
Yeah.
before, like you talk about you have to have this profile. I mean, it's
Mm.
hard to get that without being your own champion, and
Yeah,
I don't like
absolutely.
that. I'm not at all. I mean, do you think you guys would have done the social thing if you were around now with Instagram and
I,
TikTok?
I think I think it's inevitable that we would have had to have done it. So, but I think that kind of maybe coming through now we would. So for us, starting a band, the way it works is, and obviously there are many steps along the way, but for us, back in the day, it was right. Start a band, do some gigs, get a record deal, wicked, we're famous. That's kind of it. Do you know what I mean? There was no.
Yeah,
Whereas I think so. I've got friends that are in bands nowadays, and I would say a solid a solid 95% of them are really committed to DIY, to kind of putting stuff out themselves and retaining as much control, being really on top of their social media, that kind of thing. And for us, I think, back in the day, if we'd have been put in that position, I don't think we were the sort of people to be managing our own social media or even doing those own kind of our own kind of promotion. Now, I don't know if that's because we never considered that to be part of necessary skill set to be a musician, because obviously for us it won,
yeah,
whereas I think nowadays I think people are a lot more kind of a lot more aware of the kind of 360-degree responsibility of an artist. Ultimately nobody's going to care about more about your product than you are, so you really need to be pursuing every avenue to, I hate it again, to sell your
yeah.
product, whereas we, to our detriment, we never really thought about it, the kind of commercial side of it, really. It was just write songs, play songs,
Not to be you say that. I
gigs.
mean, from my point of view as a fan of yours,
Mm.
I knew when you were playing, where you were playing. I could buy a T-shirt, I could buy the CD.
Sure, yeah.
The second album you were recording, I remember really enjoying Paul was doing blogging at the time of the
All right, okay.
experience.
Yeah,
And
right.
like, because like you weren't getting the updates on Facebook feed or whatever, right? It's just like, oh, every however often you was doing them, he'd say this is what happened in the studio today, and it was good or bad or whatever. And
Right.
that was fun from a fan's point of view. And I kind of feel, and this may just be me being a miserable old bastard, right? But you kind of
Yeah,
feel
sure.
like you can get fatigued with the constant, oh, here's that band on Instagram again and again and again. And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think it's nice to know, not like it's to be a cliche, but absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely, yeah.
you're my favorite band. If I listen to that band every single day, you won't be my favorite band. And I
Yeah,
think
sure.
it's nice to have, that was a fantastic gig. I really enjoyed that album. They're playing again in 2 months. Cool. I'll go again in June.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it gets to like, you know, those seeds get to grow themselves,
Yeah.
don't they? And they're given the opportunity to be beautiful flowers rather than cut flowers every day that you didn't know were going to die in 6 hours, kind of thing.
Yeah, but then
Yeah.
again, if I was to look at the other side of that, I first saw you guys on TV.
Okay.
You were on the New Kings of Rock and Roll. I want to say it was with Jet, but I could be wrong. Anyway,
Yeah, it could well have been. Yeah.
I never really got into Jet. They always felt like, and this is something you guys did really well, not to sound like I'm blowing smoke, but I like, sort of classic rock and music that's been there, done that. And I like modern bands that acknowledge that, but there comes a point for me where I think you're just copying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Airborne, you kind of think, well, that's just AC/DC Mark II. I'll just listen to AC/DC. Do you know what I mean? And
100%. That's what turns me off a lot of what would be considered to be kind of into the classic rock, mold nowadays. Every now and then, my Facebook timeline will throw an ad up for an act or something like that. And for me, as soon as I mentions of whiskey, outlaws, motorbikes, any stuff like that, and I'm thinking, you know what, that might have been cool in like 1974 or 1971 or something like that. But nowadays, I'm thinking, mate, you're not an outlaw. You work in IT, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. But
just own it. Yeah. So you guys, there was. Yeah, so I think it was Jet on TV with you, and I always felt like Jet, they didn't really do it for me. I think it would be unfair to say they were a copy of what came before, but they weren't strong enough for me. But then there was something about the Glitterati that just ticked all the boxes for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I still listen to all your music. But I saw you on TV, and I thought like, it was a stage show. I just remember you guys are all sweaty. The lights were dangerous. That looks like a proper rock gig in a small venue. And so obviously the internet was around, so I was able to kind of give you a Google and find out when you were playing and whatever. And I came to the show in London just before your first album came out.
Okay.
But obviously most bands don't get the opportunity to be on TV in the first place. So I'm thinking, how would I have discovered you without that? So just trying to be fair to kind of social media stuff, I'm thinking, what was because maybe it wasn't as unusual as I kind of imagined it to be, but it felt to me like you guys suddenly looked young or young enough for it to be like, this looks like quite a quick career path, that you're suddenly on TV, you're on a major label, you're in LA recording with Mike Klink. Like, what was that like?
So I mean, for any avoidance of doubt, it wasn't a quick. The way that I perceive it wasn't a quick process. So I went to nursery with Paul, so I'd known him from being 3 years old, and from being 11 years old, we'd been in a band together.
Yeah,
like we probably it was properly that kind of school band sort of real formative stuff. But we sort of had interests from labels and stuff, but I say interest in that, the third junior A&R man's cousin's sister's roommate came to see us in Leeds a couple of times. So real kind of the absolute feeler of feelers from labels that these guys were it kind of thing. And I suppose probably at that time we felt like, well, we certainly were heading in the right direction. But it wasn't until we moved to London. Well, no, that's not true, actually. So we recorded a demo before we moved to London. It was kind of like, as I'm sure bands have done since time immemorial, you get in the pub and you create this great plan for world domination. This is what we're going to do. Rah, rah, rah. And kind of was like, right, okay. We just hooked up with, I don't know if you'd know him as Jamie or Wolf. I can only ever think of him as Wolf. We just hooked up with bass player Wolf.
Yeah, that would be Jamie to me. That was his name on the liner notes of the CD.
Well, it's funny, it's even weird for me saying Paul, because I don't think I've ever, for my entire life, I've never called him Paul. So it's not bad. I'm trying to give you common reference points. We just hooked up with Wolf, and and I think he was living down in Bristol or something like that. So it was, it was that conversation. He was like, "Well, I'll come live in Leeds," and I think, just conversation kind of turned around. So, well, why don't we just go live in London? We'll all kind of go live down there. So, in actual fact, we were down in London for about, I'm going to say, 6, 8 months, something like that, before we signed our publishing deal. So we signed our publishing deal first with Universal. And actually, it was our A&R guy at Universal, a guy called Stephen Jones, who, for all intents and purposes, managed us for that year. Kind of hooking it. Actually, he was the person that was, organising us meeting with accountants, other managers, lawyers. He really was the guy that kind of um, put it all together for the business kind of side of it, put that kind of together. So, and then about a yearish after that, when the publishing money had run out, or was just about to run out, that's when we signed a record deal. So it probably took us about 18 months from moving down to London to actually sign a record deal. And obviously, we had a good solid, up to signing the publishing deal, it was proper, ketchup sandwiches and white cider, like, 4 of us in a bed because we lived in a freezing house, not sleeping in a bed, but during the day, we'd all just get in bed and watch telly. And rather than having a meal, we'd watch Ready Steady Cook. That became like a meal replacement service. So yeah, about 18 months to sign the record deal, and kind of leading up to that, we'd done a single on Pop Tones. I think that's Alan McGee's label back in the day, like Super Cool. So we'd done that. I think probably not much after we signed our publishing deal. So probably from publishing deal onwards, we started to get, well, we had an income for one. We could eat and drink, and kind of that's when another Glitterati saying was meetings means meals. So we'd take meetings with anybody because we knew they'd feed us, basically. So that's when we started to get, a little bit more of a taste for kind of the glamour. But I think we all possibly perceived ourselves as being a little bit, I don't know. You take us to these nice places, but it don't mean we have to be nice. Do you know what I mean? So, and not that we were like, none of us were wildly ill-mannered people or anything like that. Like, but probably, we probably, again, this is something where you look back and kind of go, maybe I should have kind of been almost a bit more of a tourist. Because my thing, wherever we went, whatever we did, I hated the idea of being a tourist or a sightseer. So I was never like, oh, I was always very much like, no, it's because we are where we are and we're kind of doing our thing. And this is all normal. Years later, you kind of look back and go, there, that wasn't normal. That really wasn't normal at all, but not wanting to get too heavy on it. I think depending on your personality going into that situation, you could just run with it and just have the best time and drink it all in for what it is. But I think other people, there are you pursue coping mechanisms to help you navigate a world that maybe you don't feel quite like you fit into.
I think that's kind of why there's so much historically substance abuse in
100%. Like I could like 200%. I think I certainly went into it with an expectation that because I was really kind of not that I knew what I wanted out of it, but kind of, my sort of the idea of getting a record deal and be able to be a full-time musician and go on tour and all stuff like that. I was so like, from being such a young kid, I was so fixated on that's the goal. And as soon as I reach that goal, all of my neuroses and insecurities are just going to disappear because finally people will like, will recognize prodigious talent, obviously. And you kind of, certainly for me, I got there and I realized I actually, rather than making my neuroses better, it actually made my neuroses worse. I actually felt, I suppose I had a massive case of imposter syndrome, and it being the sort of the time that it was, and us being the age that we were, a group of young men, and maybe not being as emotionally mature as I guess maybe people around that age are nowadays. We're a lot more open in terms of like mental health problems and stuff like that, and kind of, I'll give a shout out to Andy's Man Club. Not that I have any affiliation with it or anything like that, but I just, the idea that men talk about their struggles and their feelings, I think is so important. And as a musician, having kind of sort of lived those struggles and seen other people live those struggles as well, you think, had we been a bit more mature and able to express our issues at that time, then maybe between the five of us, we wouldn't have necessarily had the struggles that we had, in that lifestyle. Like, if that's not too, if I'm not speaking too around the subject, obviously
No,
attempting not to be too direct with it, really.
no, I mean it's an interesting one because it's similar to what I said before about you see bands and productions on stage, but you don't know what it takes to get the people on the stage. How do you feel looking back? Obviously, you're in it and you're in it at the moment, and everything kind of looking forward, if you know what I mean. Like now that it's in the past, how do you look back on the Glitterati as not your kind of personal involvement in it, but just as its own entity, the music that you made, the time it was made, like where you fit into that kind of
I think from a timing point of view, the time was right.
Yeah,
I think the kind of popular culture had kind of come around to a point where people had an appetite for. I mean, I remember it, even before we moved down to London, I remember going to like, what were the coolest bars in Leeds, and all of a sudden, you got a guy playing like, Aerosmith and GNR, and maybe even a bit of like Poison or Alice Cooper. That, there seemed to be. I don't want to say, I don't know if it was big enough for a scene, but there were like a couple or three bars where like the coolest, prettiest people and I went, So I think for us it was very much the right time for the music that we were making and the way that we looked. Because I'm not, you know, I personally feel I'm really proud of the second album. I'm not. I have reservations about the first album, but I'm really proud of the second album. And even though I think the first album issues are more probably mixed issues and kind of sound choice issues rather than the songwriting kind of thing. So I always thought we wrote good songs, and we consciously pursued being songwriters, in the sense that, again, I remember being in rehearsal and being, don't bore, a little saying that I had was, don't bore us, get to the chorus, which I think we got from Aerosmith. I don't know, but we were very much focused on writing hooky, memorable songs that were heavy as well. But I won't discount the fact that the marketplace was kind of right for the songs that we were writing and the sounds that we produced. But I also am not blind to the fact that the way we looked and the way we were as people, that was the kind of the third leg of the stool, as it were. It was something for people to go. A bunch of lads that, a bunch of not bad looking lads with appropriate haircuts and leather wear.
I think for me as a I was living at home when you were on that New Kings of Rock and Roll TV show. I was living at home. I was a teenager. I remember it being very indie dominated at the time.
Sure.
And it never did it for me. It always just felt a bit. It didn't feel insincere or anything. It just felt a bit mopey for my taste.
Yeah.
You can tell one band from the next. I don't, to this day, I don't like Radiohead for the same reason. I don't want to listen to music that makes me want to find the nearest bridge to jump
Fair
off
play,
of.
mate.
You know,
Yeah,
so
fair
I
play.
can appreciate the musicality in it, but it
Mhm.
just doesn't turn me on. And I think that I remember going to school and friends were like, "Oh, yeah, this band and that band." So I'm like, "Yeah, they're shit. Yeah, it's just very watered down." And then I kind of saw you on TV. I think, "Oh, fucking hell, that's who's this? Who are these guys?" And I think what you did, you know, like I said before, I've kind of got that discerning. You're too much of a throwback. You're too modern. You're too this. You're too that.
Mm,
Some of that band is like, I think some modern rock bands, it's here's a cool riff, we'll just call that the song. I think there's not
yeah,
really a
sure.
song. Or you get the other side where it's more indie, where it's here's my journal, let me tell you. And just
Oh
you
my
were
days,
somewhere in
yeah.
between, where it's like these are real songs
Mhm.
with real subjects, and then musically, and as a guitar player, like there's melodies being played on this guitar, and the song's doing
Right on.
something. Just you got the chorus, and there's hooks, and they just think like for me watching you, the timing was right in the sense of you felt like your own thing rather than being
Mhm.
like, you know, sometimes you think there's 10 bands that are kind of good at what they do and this one just happened to make it.
Sure, yeah, sure.
But there
I
felt something
don't
like,
think we sound. Yeah, I don't think that there was anybody really that sounded like us at that point.
yeah,
I think that, I think people were briefly kind of interested in kind of drawing comparisons between us and say like the Towers of London,
oh that's right, yeah, yeah,
and I've got to be honest, say I've still never heard a Towers of London song, so I couldn't say if it's true or not, and even I remember playing a gig with them really, really early doors, probably, pre-record deal or really, really early doors. And just, I think we played before them and we left. I just remember them being dickheads, to be frank.
that
Do you
was
know
their
what I mean?
whole thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, just the whole, but to me, it felt like shtick. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Just
yeah,
like, I didn't, I never felt, and I don't think we ever felt the need to be like raw, kind of deliberately kind of ultimately we were just having a good time. And that
yeah,
however that good time manifested itself really
yeah,
without the need of being like petulant children just throwing stuff around just for a bit of
yeah. I
attention,
think you guys, the music, because like you said, for them it looked like shtick, it felt like that.
Hmm.
And that's all well and good if that's the vehicle to get attention, and then the substance happens to also be there to back it up. And I never really felt like it was.
No.
And then I felt like you guys were more the music kind of could do the talking. You know, it
Right
stood up
on, thank you.
of its own kind of whatever the word is, merit.
Yeah, sure, sure. Well, like I said, we were really, really, we were focused on writing the best songs that we could because we were always into bands that had proper songs,
Yeah,
actual proper songs. So like even if you go to like obviously GNR have got amazing songs, but like, Queen, even I know when we first got down to London, for whatever reason, somebody just dropped the Kiss seed. And so we just all went, when you're living together, you kind of have this like a little hermetically sealed environment where you just everybody gets into the same thing. So I remember we all went mad for Kiss. And actually you kind of go, when you look at it, they're just pop songs really, and not even particularly heavy or heavy at all really, but they are great songs and that kind of reality that on that realization that you go, you know what? We can be heavy and still have melodies as well.
yeah,
The two are not exclusive. In actual fact, the best combination for me would be something crazy heavy, but then with beautiful melodies as well. Because obviously
yeah.
they're not exclusive. They're not mutually exclusive. They're actually sort of super complementary. I always look at the Wild Arts
Oh yeah,
as
yeah. You
as
played
being
with them.
like. Yeah, we did a couple of tours with him. Yeah, for me, Ginger Wildheart is just the songwriter of his generation. I just think, you know, their blend of melody, harmony, and heavy riffs, I think they get it so right. And to be honest, it's a mystery to me why they're not,
Yeah,
held up. It's British rock music. They should be. Um, I don't say this with any sort of like concrete knowledge or any kind of backstage gossip or anything like that, but just the kind of feel that I got from those guys is they were just writing songs that rocked and went out and toured and played and just lived, that kind of troubadour sort of like, old school vibes. So if you write songs, you go out and tour and you put records out and stuff like that. Never, and maybe I'm doing them a massive disservice here, but I didn't get that feeling of we want to be massive stars. They're almost kind of, they
yeah,
found
you
our
get that
lane.
from like you read interviews with Ginger, and it felt like that. I remember like probably about the same time as listening to you for the first time, so, kind of late teens.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing something on his website where he would answer questions on his website. So
Okay.
I had this thing where like I used to email with him a little bit, not like
No way.
ask him some questions. And I remember asking like, what amp are you using? I think he came back and said he had been using, I think he said he had previously had like the Slash signature Marshall and this and that, and he was now using this. Just these kind of like gear conversations, and it's just like, who does that? That kind of accessibility, and then it wasn't like, I'll turn this into content. It was just an interaction with a fan that
Right on.
it just like, that's very, very rare, I think.
Yeah, I like that. Again, it's that it's not there's no pursuit of the transactional quality. Do you know what I mean? It's just simply, I'm just having a conversation with somebody and giving somebody information, somebody that's interested enough to ask and talk about. And I think that's really, really cool, mate.
But I want to talk your playing a little bit, if that mind.
Okay.
You
cool.
mentioned about heavy songs with melodies and stuff, and like I said, that melody was what attracted me to my ears. Like, oh, there's melodies in here. And so, what was your kind of progression as a player? Like when you were a kid and you got turned on to instrument, and then obviously you developed your specific style.
Yeah, sure.
That's a record.
I started. I'll try and do the potted history in the least dull fashion that I possibly can. So I started playing when I was 11. And my grandparents had bought me like a Spanish guitar when I was probably 7 or 8. They'd been to Spain and come back with the classic beta guitar. I was presented the guitar, and obviously it's pre-internet, so it's not like you just go on YouTube and go, right, how do I do this thing now? I was just literally, this guitar was dropped on me. I had no concept of what the frets did or anything, so I was just like, so these 6-string things, and they all make a different sound. And I remember spending a bit of time trying to write songs on it just by using the open strings and like obviously not knowing anything about it and trying to remember what order and stuff. And obviously it sounded how you'd expect it to sound. But going to high school at 11, playing out with my mates, of which Gautry Paul was one, we decided in that summer. That summer holiday before high school, we were going to be a band because we'd end up playing on this building site and kind of, a part of it. We just took as being a stage, so we're running around, sort of pretending we were GNR. So we decided we were going to be a band. Obviously, at that point, none of us played anything. So we'd already made the commitment to rock and roll before even deciding they were going to play what. So that Christmas, we all got a drummer got a drum kit. I got a guitar, electric guitar. Paul, I think, was playing bass. He was going to play bass at the time before he realised the relationship between bass players, girls, and singers. I think he did the maths on it, and we made a wise choice. Then we played through school, did all that sort of kind of stuff, very much kind of GNR, massively GNR sort of influenced. And this is obviously way before we have any ability to get near playing any Guns N' Roses songs, but what does that matter when you're 11 or 12, you know.
Right.
Um, I'd grown up listening to Queen, so I had a real, just, I think, so obviously hearing Slash for the first time was a really sort of pivotal thing for me as a guitar player. You know, it kind of that was the sound that I wanted to make on a guitar. I'd sort of come from listening to Queen and listening to Brian, and you know, obviously years kind of later, um, having played a lot of Queen stuff and a lot of GNR stuff, it's kind of I realised that from a playing accessibility point of view, there's probably not a lot in it really, but as a kid, what Brian was doing was completely unaccessible to me, and even now, yeah, when I you can hear the education in Brian's playing. I think
Mm.
you know that he knows what chord tone he's just hit. You know, whereas obviously with Slash, it gives off that feel of just like drunkenly wandering around a fretboard and it just sounding meandering around a fretboard. You know, which I loved. So I think the Brian thing had obviously, um, you know, kind of introduced that rock stars with capes and like superhero kind of guitar playing. But I think also there's something in Brian's note choices which had started to kind of sort of seep into my brain. It wasn't always necessarily going to be the most obvious harmony. And then listening to Slash, and you know, although he's, you know, we obviously all think of him as being sort of minor pentatonic predominantly, but he does a lot of I call them split six, but I think they're just six. So it'd be like, you know, um, easier if I show you. Sort of thinking of a D like that.
Right.
So just introducing those kind of, I think he's a lot more maybe he's a lot more harmonically complex than maybe I thought he was at the time. And it's obviously only as your education develops and you start to hear that complex, you know, you start to hear, oh, that's an interesting choice, rather than, you know, here's a fifth again kind of thing. So I think I'd always um, been attracted to kind of what you would consider to be rock guitar players, but they were always kind of rock guitar players that knew where to place a note.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And kind
Yeah.
of what note to kind of, you know, I could play this note or I could play this note, and it maybe is just going to be a bit more unsettling. There are certain guitar players where you think, I don't understand why you're sort of held the, you know, held in the regard that you're held in.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, I'm also very conscious of, um, you know, music being art, not sport. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, some people might look at a Lowry painting and go, that's rubbish. Your fellas look rubbish. What are you doing? And other people would just be like, wow, that's, you know, that's really moving. That really resonates with me, kind of thing. So I think, you know, I've always had a taste for less um, sort of maybe more. I've always appreciated more dissonance in my music, you know, than always necessarily um, the most consonant choice that somebody could make. So I think I've tended to, although certainly coming up through that minor pentatonic school, where I think, you know, 90% of guitarists kind of come up that path, don't they? I think I'd always, yeah, just I don't know if it was just good fortune or and it just happened to be that the guitar players in the bands that I like made those choices, or whether I like those bands because the guitar players were making those choices. I don't quite know which way it went round, but yeah, I've always had um, you know, a taste for a flat five, or you know, bending a six into a flat seven, or something like that. Just those kind of, the notes that make you go, ooh, oh,
Yeah.
ooh. It's
And
a
is that
very
purely, is that, or when you were making the first album and stuff, so
mm,
obviously you've got more experience now, but when you're writing those songs and you're in a band as, well, let's talk specific about the Glitterati, I guess, because that band's
mhm,
got signed and all that kind of stuff,
mhm.
when you're writing those songs, is that a conscious thing? Are you sitting there, are you almost composing those solos, or if you, when you're writing them, are you thinking this should be a flat seven, or is it just instinctive?
100% guaranteed. Not any thought of like giving names to any intervals or anything like that. That's kind of something that I've pursued. My kind of theoretical education, music theory education, has been almost entirely post Glitterati. So like, I started to collect modes during the Glitterati without really understanding the function or, anything. But I just had a couple under my hands. So like, I must be a guitarist now. I know two modes. Um, so it was never ever um, pursued from a theoretical point of view. It was always an ear thing, always an ear thing, and it might have been that I heard something straight away, or kind of heard something that put me in the ballpark straight away. In which case, wicked. That's like, everybody can, nobody needs to beat me up. It's fine. I know what my contribution is going to be. And other times it will literally be sit down with a 4 track or an 8 track or computer, whatever recording medium you're doing. I suppose nowadays probably just do it with a looper.
Yeah.
If it's a solo, record your 8 bars and just keep playing until something feels nice. So there's a song called I'm trying to think, 'cause I know when we went to do the first album, we went in actually, or we came out with an album with more solos than we went in. So basically, we go and record, Clint could record. You kind of go, record 'em like live recordings, that sort of, I suppose, demos really. Even though we'd already demoed all the songs, he'd record them, go away, have a little, chop up on Pro Tools kind of thing, come back, discuss it, and quite a few times, all of a sudden, there's 8 bars appeared for a guitar solo. It's like wicked, nice one. But something like it wasn't on the album; it was a B-side. There's a song called "Lower Than Low." Was it lower than? No, not lower than that. Skin Tight. That didn't have a guitar solo originally. And I remember, sitting in my, they got us an apartment to live in while we were recording. And I just remember sitting there for hours. This is Mike Clink as well. So it's not like I'm just going to turn up and go, do you know what? I'm just going to jam it. We'll just see what happens. You know, I remember sitting in my room with a 4 track. And well, I remember, so not the concept that I might be doing anything like that just hadn't occurred to me at all. You go in, you record these songs, right? The idea that kind of you'd be sent home with homework, as it were, just didn't occur to me. So I went to Guitar Center to buy myself a distortion pedal that I could plug into the 4 track just so I could get some sort of tones. As it goes, I actually bought a Bad Monkey for $18, which I understand are now worth like 90,
What
90
did you
quid.
buy?
A Digitech Bad Monkey.
Oh.
And I literally bought it because it was the cheapest in the store, $18, and it had a direct out. And now some guy put a video out on it recently, and all of a sudden they're turning up on like, Facebook Marketplace and on eBay and stuff like 100+ quid. And like it's like, damn, I'm holding on to that one. It's the future TS9, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So like Skin Tight, yeah, I remember sitting there sweating, just trying to come up with a lead. And that was, I actually think, so I recorded myself a little back in, I think we had a little 4 track. I'd record just like the rhythm changes on 1, and then record a solo on 2, record another solo on 3, record another solo on 4. Repeat, until something happens, and I'd be looking through. So actually, I remember Skin Tight is actually a couple of different solos, kind of comped together. Um, First Floor again, that's a solo that was a studio one, but I feel like that came together. That was a pretty quick one to come together. Better Man, I don't think that had. I think it had the little sort of like ascending like widdly bit. I think that was what we had, but the first part of the solo, probably the first 8 bars, that was something that, yeah, all of a sudden there's a hole in the song and thanks going, that's for you. So, that, but again, that was, I think everything was, I would say, if not directly composed, all the solos on there, if not as in like, I'm working out, no, this is right, no, that's not right, start to finish composing the solo. I don't think any of them were particularly like that. They all would have kind of gone through the jam process, jam it, and then kind of, knock the edges off kind of thing,
Yeah.
compiling it basically.
You also did a lot just throughout the song. You are one of those players. I'll tell you who else I think is a very underrated player, but in a massive band. We always feel weird saying it, but I always felt like with the Darkness, Dan Hawkins lead playing. They're really melodic solos.
Yeah,
Some solos are in the song just because there should be a guitar solo, and then there are solos that are in a song because they're part of the song and they sort of
sure, yeah.
and move the song. And I felt like in the Darkness, like you listen, some of their songs have like 3, 4 solos, but you never feel like bored of them. They're purposeful. And I
Yeah.
thought listening to your playing, it's like the solos there, but you're also playing lead at other parts of the song. You're moving into the chorus. You're almost like an assistant to the vocals.
Right on,
I think
thank you.
like
Yeah,
some
brilliant.
lead players are like, I'll play the same as the rhythm guy, and then there's a solo, and then I'm back playing the chords. And I felt, was that deliberate? Were you consciously
Yeah,
like,
well,
I've got a job here to move the song along?
it was certainly informed by the idea that I felt like it would be a waste to have Denson and I both playing the same parts. It felt like, um, so for me, I can kind of, the power is not just from creating this thick soup of electric of like heavy guitars that just kind of, that just felt like really one dimensional to me. I was far more interested in kind of not just kind of the melodic influence that I could have on a set of changes, whether that's kind of reinforcing a major or minor tonality, or kind of sending it way out of where you felt. Not only did I feel like I could contribute harmonically, but I also felt like sort of, although I was playing lead lines, rhythmically what that could do, it kind of maybe slightly affect the way that you perceive where the beat is, or maybe put a little bit of a role into, so something like, I don't know if, in fact I think we talked about last time, a song called Too Many Girls
Yeah,
was
that is
like
that song. That was a song I used to play to people who I thought they're probably not big rock fans.
okay,
What I mean? Not in a disparagement. That was my favorite
yeah,
song.
sure,
This is the song. The lead line, like the riff to that song, was just, it would appeal to anyone.
wicked, thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm right bang into it. The process of speaking to you has kind of allowed me to dip back into the Glitterati, because I kind of don't in a typical a typical life experience kind of thing. But there's a guitar part in the bridges on that. It's like a little guitar lead line in the guitar part, which is just like digga 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 digga, and you know it just kind of I felt it kind of um imparted like a bit of a sense of movement, kind of that rolling kind of quality. And I'd always I just, I really, really love it when people use the full kind of stereo width that's available to them on a recording. I really love that because, you know, for one, it makes your mix easier. And I say this without, not as a mix engineer, but what I mean is when I'm listening to a recording, I'm listening, I am that boring guy who listens to Appetite well, 4 times, so I could listen to each individual instrument, you know, so I could really focus on those instruments. But I love, that's what I want in a recording. I want to be able to go, oh, I dig what this guitar player is playing. I dig what that's playing. Hey, what's that bit that's just there? And you know, just that kind of um um oh, I can't help but be pretentious, but that kind of that tapestry of sound that's
Yeah,
created,
yeah,
you know, rather than I kind of somewhat see a little bit of rock music almost as being like a plastic sheet. It's just a sheet that you just put over something. It's just,
yeah,
whereas I think I always wanted us to have to be sort of dynamic, rhythmically and melodically dynamic, you know, and everybody kind of. We had 5 guys in our band, and it made a lot of sense to me for each of those 5 guys to be contributing their 20% rather than me and Denson going, we're just gonna be responsible for making, you know, Marshall's soup,
yeah.
basically.
And then the bass playing the root note on top, and it's just basically three doing the same thing. Yeah,
But that's your rock thing, isn't it? And I mean, I
yeah,
remember being 17 and having arguments with bass players going, stop playing lead bass, stop playing lead bass, just play the root. And obviously now, I spend my days playing with a bass player who's just, he's the most musical player. I spend so much time laughing at what he's playing. And I don't mean laughing as in like, what are you doing? I mean, laughing as in this is a joyous experience for me to be just listening to you, just wandering, but always like, you know, hitting the right note at the right time kind of thing. I just, and in fairness to Wolf, actually, I think Wolf was quite a creative bass player. But I think it's such a waste when you get, if you're a three-piece band, right? I accept that you're going to sound a certain way if you're a
yeah,
three-piece. We're a 5-piece, and I mean, even we had Benson playing piano occasionally. So you know, there was no justifiable reason for us to kind of just go, you know, as much as maybe, you know, some of us wanted to on occasion be a bit more um, less nuanced, I guess.
right.
But I felt like, yeah, we were generally speaking, it was all about finding your part and kind of making your contribution, or me finding my part and making what I felt like was a valid contribution to the song, not just
Yeah,
being
yeah.
widdly guy in the middle. Done.
How do you feel about Widdly guys?
Uh, so I'm a guitarist, so you know I think it's really important that somewhere in your trick bag, if somebody says to you, play really quickly and play really flashy, I think you've probably got to have it in there. If you know, if you need to be able to do it, then it should be there. And I'm as guilty as anybody who's just sitting there noodling and just like blah, blah, blah. You know, for my own amusement, I'm as absolutely as guilty as every guitarist for doing that. But I think that there's a fine line between kind of. So let's take somebody like Guthrie Govan, right? Do you know Guthrie Govan?
Yeah, yeah. He feels like he's absorbed every guitar player on the planet and can just do anything he wants to.
I know. So for me, Guthrie's that guy where it's like you play as fast as you like, and I know that not only does he hear every note he's playing, he means every note he's playing. Do you know what I mean? It's not just
Yeah,
like he's going blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
and it's done just to make you go like that. I feel like it's just about the speed thing is really just about it's got to be justifiable within the context of the song or within the context of what you're playing. And obviously, there can be lots of reasons. And I think even sometimes, if you know, certainly from a live point of view, you know, if you just spot somebody that seems like they're really into it, just wander over and just have a little shred for like, you know, a couple of beats or a bar or something like just for that whole live experience of giving somebody a little bit of kind of thing. But what I'm really conscious of is it's art, not sport. And the moment that I feel people start playing sport guitar, I'm not into that, you
Yeah,
know?
when it's speed for speed's sake, because
Exactly.
he can be, but like you know, like you said, Guthrie can play as fast as anyone, but he
Mhm.
means it. And then you have again, I might be speaking out of place, not really my genre, but when you see videos or you listen to music from sort of particularly metal bands, and you can
Mm.
tell they're just going up and down arpeggios. You think,
Yeah.
yeah, it's technically impressive, but I don't enjoy it. And I know again, heresy to say this, but Eruption came on one of my playlists last week.
Okay.
And I thought, like, I can appreciate what he did, and especially at the time he did it. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't call it like a song I want to just listen to.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that were it? You're just like, am I getting the chorus now or what? What's
Yeah,
going on? It's same as I mean, I love Nuno Betancourt as well. I really love Nuno. But you take something like Flight of the Wounded Bumblebee. It's like,
yeah,
well done, awesome. I appreciate however long you put into learning that and to be able to play it fluidly. But you
it
know that
doesn't move
song
you.
yeah, that song that's coming afterwards with like a chorus and stuff. I like that better. For
Yeah,
me, you know, a lot of the kind of the speed thing and kind of justifying it, it's exactly the same as talking or singing to me. Exactly the same. So, like, you know, if somebody asked you to talk about whatever topic, you know, the cadence of your voice, you know, whether, you know, quiet, louder, faster, slower kind of thing. As long as you're talking on topic, then, you know, that's the speed that you use is just maybe facilitating your expression of excitement, or you know your use of volume might just be about introducing tension, or you know letting something breathe. But if you're being asked to talk about guitar and all of a sudden you start talking about teapots, you know, talking really fast about teapots is going to sound ridiculous. So it's just about again, this is I suppose mature as a musician, although I don't like to think about it in that way. It's just about realizing that it's just about communication, and you might not necessarily always be telling your own story, but sometimes you should be asked to tell somebody else's story and do that in the most respectful
yeah,
way that you can do it. You know.
yeah. So, how was your experience? So, you did the band thing, the
Hmm.
Glitterati. You broke up when you broke up,
Hmm.
and now you're in the Blues Brothers. So you're in
Hmm.
theatre, and then was it session work you were doing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, what was that? And how? Well, one, what was that kind of process like? And two, what was it like mentally to adjust to being I'm in a rock band to guitar being career?
Yeah, sure. So it was a really like um sort of sobering. I felt really out of my comfort zone. So as I said to you, I'd been in the band with Paul since I was 11 years old. So and I think I left when I want to say 31-ish, something like that. So been playing with maybe 32, but I've been playing with him for the better part of 20 years, and I'd always been in bands, and I'd never been that guy to go, I'm in three bands. You know, I've got this band and I've got this other band and I'm doing this kind of thing. I was always just, this is my band. And it always had a very sort of gang mentality, really. And so when I kind of found myself in a position to, when we moved back to Yorkshire, obviously even if I'd kind of wanted to, um, not that if it would have happened, but let's say I'd kind of gone, actually, you know what, guys, let's let's do another album, let's write some songs, right, let's work it all out. geographically, it was probably maybe it was the best thing for me just to have that clean break, that kind of that separation from that life kind of thing. But yeah, it was really like felt very much out of my comfort zone, very much like, well, I don't know how to kind of go about pursuing this even. How do you kind of bear in mind that I had no support network as in like other musicians kind of thing. I didn't know anybody up here anymore. So it literally was starting from scratch. I felt very kind of reluctant to be um, going up. Yeah, I used to be in a major label band and rah, rah, rah. I just didn't want to be that guy kind of going, oh yeah, I'm whatever, rah, rah, rah kind of thing.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
Yeah, then re- do you know who I am? I do, mate, and your man was shit. Now just be quiet. Yeah, I never wanted to be that guy. So it's just a lot of um, answering a lot of ads, um, playing a lot of really bad gigs for really bad money with really um, with answering a lot of ads to play a lot of gigs that maybe weren't necessarily good payers, but you're going, okay, well, this is maybe something that can lead into something. And then you get there and you realize that actually, with the kindest heart and with the best will in the world, these were not players or performers that were going to realistically be able to make a living from it. Do you know? And I feel a little bit guilty kind of putting it like that, but you know, that's just the reality of it. Just
Right.
just
Yeah.
not operating at that level kind of thing. Um, so yeah, it's just um, answering a lot of ads, and the Blues Brothers was the same thing to be honest. But when I answered the ad for it initially, I mean it was literally a totally fresh startup thing. So there was no they weren't working or anything like that. It was just me just taking a punt on something.
So they were a
Um,
new show at the time you joined.
totally brand. Yeah, I don't. It certainly not got to stage. Very much a putting it together kind of point of view. And actually, it took longer than it needed to take to actually get together to kind of pull it together. At that time, it was um, sub almost subcontracting the horn section. So like, no, it was very much germ of an idea, I suppose, really, and kind of finding a way to put it together rather than necessarily being. I mean, it's a different. It's it. The change to nowadays is just immeasurable. To actually what it became. But I kind of remember going in there and kind of thinking, still answering ads for other gigs and just kind of trying to work. And as it turns out, the Blues Brothers thing, it just took too long for me to come together. It was just like I can't, um, I need to be earning money basically, and that's not, that's just reality. I won't pretend that's not reality. Um, but because I'd been doing this, I got to know some of the guys in the horn set. This is kind of where I started to develop a bit of a network where all of a sudden you find out, you know, these guys went to Leeds College of Music, and there's a bunch of people that are working that they know, and this guy's from so and so, and this guy's kind of doing so and so, and all of a sudden it's like we know a guitar player that's all right. If you're looking for guitar, so it kind of just I was fortunate to not fortunate to find myself in that situation, but I did find myself in that situation where fortunately I was sort of hooking up with people that had already made those connections in this area. If you know, and so my Venn diagram crossed into theirs and swallowed up their contacts as well, kind of thing. It was actually through the saxophone player that I got the Queen tribute job, and
All right.
actually it was the and that literally was So an ad, this guy put a video of his motor, 'cause he ran a Motown show as well at the time. And my mate Sam was playing sax on that. So I'm like, Nate, do you know this guy? Is this you? Is this you? It's like, yeah. I'm like, can you put a word in for me? Yeah, absolutely. So as it turned out, what he told this guy was that the way that he described me as was he'll play what's on the record. So that's all I've done with the Blues Brothers stuff. It was just like I'm sort of a bit of a OCD transcriber as well, you know, like quite we're gonna get this note for note kind of thing. So I'd done that with the Blues Brothers, and ultimately because I'd kind of done that for this guy, this sax player had seen me doing that for that. That was enough of a kind of this guy will do no like bells and whistles, just simply this guy will do a job for you. And my experience is that he's competent enough to do the job for you, you know. I'd done that for probably 3, 4 years. Had some personal stuff happen, which ultimately I stopped. I took a year off playing guitar. At that point, I just completely lost my love for it. Completely lost, and I say I was completely lost my love for it. I started building guitars. Had a year off where I was just building guitars, um, and then bizarrely, I got a pocket dial from the guy that ran the Blues Brothers show. But by this, I think I'd decked them a couple of times, and obviously it appreciated that it had gotten into like bigger, nicer venues, and it was kind of becoming a legitimate production kind of thing. Got a total random pocket dial off the producer, missed the call, and phoned him back, and he was like, "I phoned you by accident, but as you're on, do you fancy a couple? I need a guitar player for some gigs up in Scotland. Do you fancy?" It was 3 gigs. So went up, did the 3 gigs, had a wicked time. I mean, it's one of those situations where you go in expecting one. I expected the band or the cast to be all the people that I'd left, you know, when I stopped doing it all those years ago. And it was a completely new lineup, and it's like, oh, this is a different thing now. This is a different thing, you know. And yeah, did the 3 gigs. Got a phone call the next week saying, "Do you fancy the gig?" I'm like, "Yeah, wicked. Why not?" You know, because it's like we were playing like the biggest, some of the biggest theatres in the country, and you know, we finish at 10 o'clock, and you know, I never deal with drunks. I've never had one person saying, "Can I have a go on your gum? Can I have a go on your guitar, mate?" Or "What does this pedal do?" I've never had any of that. You know, I get monitors. You know, they look after us really well. So that kind of took that thing. The session thing was always online work, online work that I'd either pursued through adverts, or people had asked me to play a little guitar on something or something, you know, which I found in some ways I found it, well, I would say 60 or it was a predominantly a rewarding experience because again it gets those creative juices that maybe I don't necessarily get in the day job, you know, although obviously I am very involved in the arrangements that we play on this show, and like, you know, my creative itch is scratched in the Blues Brothers context, but obviously it's a very different. Oh, I hear it this way. You know,
Right.
because we're playing guitar for somebody, and I had some really really positive experiences, really sort of rewarding, but sometimes sort of, you know, stretching me in ways that I wouldn't necessarily have um, thought. I really enjoyed that creative process. But equally, the whole, um, particularly doing remote guitar playing, if your initial brief is not right, you know, it's all right. Somebody goes, right, I'm looking for something like this, something like this, something like this. You go, right, cool. Think I know, you know, what you're kind of looking for. and I go back and I go, right, okay, so this is what I was thinking. How do you feel about this? It's like, yeah, but, and then I'm going to give you an entirely different brief now, and it's like, yeah, okay, so like, there were moments where it was incredibly frustrating, and maybe moments where I didn't always necessarily cover myself in glory in the way that
Right.
handled my customer service, shall we say.
So you said about the pedals. So what's I suppose kind of two in one question. What's your gear like in the Blues Brothers production thing, and how does that compare? Because obviously when I used to see you in say the small London clubs and you had like your real amps on stage, and in regardless of what you use now, modeling and digital's come such a long way. Like, are you on that bandwagon? Have you
Yeah,
still got...
I play Helix now.
Right.
Yeah, so I've got I realised now in this conversation that I actually don't have any free will at all, and I live my life through a series of small mantras. You know, there's me thinking that, you know, I do whatever. No, but now it's count the gig in one trip. You know, so it is literally Helix and the Telecaster for my gig now. And it works awesome. It's an 11-piece band. I, you know, obviously I get leads and, you know, get a couple of feature moments in the show, but predominantly I just have my, whatever the maths is, my 8% or whatever to contribute. So our singer is also our producer, and he likes a quiet stage. He don't like to hear guitar amps raging, or he likes a quiet stage basically. So the Helix is perfect, absolutely perfect for the gig. I really like the tones I get out of it. Really like the tones. I love how simple it is in terms of set up and pack down. You know, I even like the fact that I gig a Helix, but then if we go on fly dates, I've got a Helix Stomp as well, which is like the mini version of it. I just import all my settings over to the Stomp. So like, you know, it's
It just
sort of
plugs into the PA directly, does it? Or...
direct to the PA, yeah. And as long as, you know, whether depending on the gig, I might be on in ears, or I might be on a wedge, but I'm totally comfortable with that. You know, I don't. So back in the day, obviously with the Glitterati, it was 4x12s and heads and like low slung Les Pauls, and me kind of taking a moment to find the place on stage where it's going to feedback proper, you know, feedback harmoniously, you know, with a little bit of a wiggle, just finding the right place for it. Because I always back in the day, I like to use feedback a lot.
Do you miss
Yeah,
that? Do you miss that?
yeah, sometimes.
Because I was watching going back to the darkness again, Justin Hawkins as his podcast. I think he was asked a similar question, and he said, you know, he loves digital and this and that. He said, but sometimes it's fun to kind of fight that amp, like control that amp.
Yeah. I mean, so I know, you know, my Les Paul and I gigged it was a well, it was a Black Jubilee. So after they'd finished the run of silver, after the Silver Jubilee kind of run, we still had chassis and guts and circuit boards and stuff that were kind of left from the run. So they just put them in black houses. So I had one of those picked up in a guitar shop in Leeds, bizarrely in Leeds, whilst we were on tour for like 300 quid or something, just like dusty, like it was our sound engineer had found it. But that was just, you know, I could, you know, wiggle half of like an F sharp 5, you know, wiggle the A and the D string part of an F sharp 5. And I just knew that oh, you know, and I used to, I really, really loved that sort of additional voice that a guitar could have in the right, with the right equipment in the right setting, kind of thing. And actually, the Queen gig was awesome for that as well, because that was very much all about feedback, you know, all controlled feedback, you know. Yeah, and I do miss that. I do miss it, but there's no room for it in my current job. You know,
You
now
still
it's
own that Jubilee?
do you know, I literally sold it a month ago.
Did you?
Literally a month ago, and I made a considerable profit on it.
Yeah, right.
I mean, in fairness, I didn't buy it knowing what it were at all. I bought it because it sounded killer. You know, there's
Yeah.
an old Marshall that yeah was kind of found for me. It was like, yeah, because I went from a TSL Marshall TSL
I had a
from
TSL, the
did you?
four by
Did you
12.
find it?
I loved it. I had. I
Yeah.
know it was kind of disparaged at first. People weren't too
Mm,
keen. I thought, you know, if you spend time on it, it does everything that
yeah.
you want it to do.
I
And it
think
weighed,
the
it was like a 60-pound head or something, wasn't it? It was so
yeah.
expensive. So it's not
Yeah.
expensive, so heavy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was touring the TSL, and Denson was touring the DSL, and I think our Starman was just looking for a bit more differentiation in the voices.
Yeah.
You know, just from a mix point of view. So it really was kind of on his recommendation, his sourcing. He just went, you know, took me out one afternoon, went to his guitar shop, and spent an hour just playing it. And I really, really liked it. So I know it was only kind of afterwards, kind of going, what model amp is this? You know, what is this kind of thing that I kind of found out what it was. So yeah, I do still have. I've got a 1986 or 7 JCM 2x12 combo, which is like it's got the brown face on because that year they were
Is that the
doing
800?
yeah the 800 yeah they're doing the dies that they used on that particular year were a bit dodgy. So you can tell it, I think it's either 86 or 87. Basically, any of the 2x12 800 combos from that year, the black grills have faded to brown. So, like, I've still got that, but that's like, that literally is the heaviest amp known to man.
Yeah.
So, for me to take that out of the house, I often think to myself, what would it take to get me to go out with a proper amp now? And I just I don't know. It possibly would have to be something Glitterati related to me, you know, to make me
Yeah.
feel
You know
like.
what? I had the TSL 100 4x12. And
Mhm,
eventually I thought, I don't need a 4x12. So I downgraded to a 2x12.
mhm.
I thought, I don't need this side. And I went digital route. I got the Marshall code, like a 1x12.
Okay.
And then I thought, oh, I missed the valves. And I ordered a TSL 60 as a combo, 2x12
Okay.
combo. And like you said, the weight of it, you could physically pick it up. You thought, I'm not carrying this into venue. We once played a venue and it was called the attic or the loft. And it was literally in the loft.
All
And
steps.
it wasn't with that amp, thankfully, but I was thinking like, I was having kind of flashbacks. I thought, there's no way, because you'd lug it up there, then you have to use your hands to play. And I thought,
Yeah, yeah, for
oh, I sent it
sure. Yeah,
back. I thought, there's no way. I thought it doesn't even matter how good it sounds. It's impractical. So
yeah.
now if it's down there, I've got the Boss Katana.
All right.
It's
Okay.
three
Yeah,
by
yeah.
12, so it's still it's a little bit weighty, but there's no valves and stuff in it. It's pleasant enough to carry, and it's got all the. It's kind of a hybrid for me. It's digital. It's got all that stuff, but it's a real
Yeah.
amp, you know.
I think there's a, you know, as guitar players, we kind of um, we perpetuate it as well. Each generation perpetuates the idea that it's this or that guitar, and you know, valve amps and like TS9s and there's all these holy grail kind of things, and I'm sure that they make a difference when you sat alone in whatever room you play guitar in, going, oh, those valves would be awesome if I could just turn them up loud enough to get them cooking. Do you know what I mean? And then you go to a gig and you do turn it up, but you're fighting with all these other people making crazy loud noises. And actually, I think, you know, I think I sound better in a mix. You know, and I'd say that I think that every guitar player sounds better in the mix, in the context of the band that they're playing in. You know, kind of that's how I think it comes across best. And I don't know. I think somebody would have to work real hard on me to convince me that in a mix you can tell the difference between a Helix and a valve amp, you know,
Yeah,
or what's the other? What's the toaster one? Kemper. You
yeah,
know,
right.
I, I think in a mix, I just don't know. I don't know if you'd hear a difference. And I mean, obviously nowadays you get so like the bigger bands will tour with isolation cabs as well. So yeah, they might be playing valve heads, and but they'll have their cabs in soundproof boxes, because they're all playing on in ears. And I'm thinking, you're not even getting that air being pushed at you kind of 4x12 experience anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well go Helix, or you might as well go Kemper, because I know I think myself when I'm carrying a Helix into the room, and I'm sure that whoever's tech will thank them if they don't have to wheel in, six 4x12s and three heads and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think nowadays it's the way to go.
yeah, I think we're oddly, well, maybe not necessarily oddly, but we're such a traditionalist kind of group, guitar players.
Yeah.
I suppose that's you fall in love with Jimmy Page and Slash and Richie Blackmore and stuff. You think, well, that's how they did it. But you kind of think, well, I'm pretty confident that if they were playing now as new players, we'd still go, fucking hell, they sound really good. Because it's them.
Yeah.
You don't just plug into that Marshall stack, oh, I'm Jimmy Page now. Or
Exactly that. But if you think about Dave Gilmour,
right.
he, is it Dark Side? One of the Pink Floyd albums, I think he played the majority of it, or the majority of his leads, plugged directly into the desk.
Yeah, right.
Strapped to desk, and you think,
and there's so much
good enough for Dave Gilmour.
Exactly, it's good enough for Dave Gilmour, and then you think, by the time, especially on a CD, it's one thing live. On a CD in particular, that's been recorded through God knows what. They've probably got effects on, and then it's gone through the mix and the mastering, and then whatever your speakers are, like you're not hearing that. And I'll tell you what, the irony for me, I was watching, I was reading about Jimmy Page, and they'd said if he took the pick guard off, he's completely rerouted everything. It's not a stock. He's added out of phase and all this and that. And then you think,
okay,
Les Paul in particular, he's so revered as this pioneer of innovation.
Sure.
And to me, it's like, well, it's really ironic that we're like, well, we can't move from what they did 70 years ago.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
These guys they were treading new ground, weren't they? And it's like,
yeah,
no, it's
they're probably
now.
hated now. It's like, well, you're supposed to take it forward. I mean, I say that I'm a Les Paul guy through and through, but I suppose I like to think I'm self-aware enough to go, at least I recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's something like beautifully inspiring in the kind of the limitations that any guitar presents. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of how can I get this tool to serve the function that I need it to in this it's almost like how can I enjoy this piece of equipment the most and get really milk the most out of it without having to get the bells and whistles version, without having to get the chaos pads on your sort of Manson Telecaster or whatever it is.
I'm really conscious of your time here, so
okay, mate.
As a last question for you, since we're talking about gear and what you just said about getting the most out of, so what would your two Desert Island guitars be?
Right, so
I have to ask it again.
I'll do it again. So my comedy answer for this is I take an acoustic guitar and a Telecaster, and that's so that the acoustic guitar, jumbo acoustic, can function as a boat, and the Telecaster can be my paddle to get me off the island. But I also think in reality that's probably a pretty sound argument as well. I don't know why my head's going into this, but I'm thinking even as a weapon, a Telecaster is going to be, I think there's pretty much, I think all of my, amusement needs and potential defense and food culling needs could be taken care of by a Telecaster. I obviously won't need to take a tuner because it's a Telecaster again. So, but then I don't know, do you maybe go, definitely an acoustic for kind of campfire, sanity shenanigans, and I'm not. If I'm stuck in a desert island, I'm not playing any disco. So that's gonna That's taking the strut out of it straight away. And then also, obviously, with the Les Paul, I'm thinking, are those tulip tuning pegs, are they going to stand up to Desert Island life? You know, too delicate. So yeah, I'll go Telecaster and acoustic,
Yeah,
please.
my boy is, what is he, 16 months old now, and he's clocks that he loves the guitars, and
Wicked.
so a bunch of them are on my wall now, out of his way, and he found the Telecaster.
Oh, that's beautiful, actually. The green one. That's
I think
beautiful.
they call it Cosmic Jade or something ridiculous.
Okay.
I went, it was between that and a kind of dark tobacco sunburst, and I couldn't choose. And as Fortune had it, there was an electric problem with the sunburst one. So they said, "Oh, we'll fix it, but it'll be a couple of weeks." And I thought, no, I'll just take the green one. I thought it stands out. So obviously, it's something special, isn't it? And it caught the eye of my boy, and he's run up to it. And this was when he was on a stand, and he's playing with it. And I put a picture online, and people were like, "I'd worry about the kid if that Telecaster falls in." You know, they just.
Yeah, totally fine. Don't worry about it. You do what you like, kid. It's like, you know, watch out for the child.
Like,
I can see there's an orange. It looks like the side of a BC Rich, the orange guitar next to it. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to see it?
Yeah, go on. I can just see the cutout.
You're going to guess what it is?
Well, from here, it looks like a mockingbird, like the side of a mockingbird.
You are correct.
Oh, I had that guitar as well. Is it NJ series?
With the quilted, yeah, the NJ series.
NJ Classic, maybe.
Yes, and yeah, there you go. It's on the headstock.
Do you know what? That is the only guitar I regret selling.
They're nice, aren't they? I don't. It's got the.
Oh, I loved it.
No, I've got a PRS acoustic with an ebony, but it's my only electric with the ebony.
Okay.
I love it. And
yeah, I loved it.
I put Alnico 2 Pro pickups in it because the stock ones weren't up to much, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
It's lovely to play.
Oh, I loved it. I think one of the, you know, I'm old enough to kind of not be choosing guitars on their appearance kind of thing, or, you know, only on their appearance. But I just think that is just such a beautiful guitar. You know, the lines on it just rip, and the headstocks. Oh,
it is, because I remember when I got it, I've forgotten, unfortunately. There's so many woods on it. It's obviously made of ebony, but the lines through it are walnut, and it's got the ebony board. Yeah.
Beautiful. And do you know what's worse? I didn't actually sell it. I swapped it. I swapped it for a Variax.
No.
I
mean, that keeps you up at night, isn't it?
It's just like, oh no. It's like at the time, I really thought I was like, I don't know if I wanted a Strat or I wanted something, and I just really felt like I want gigging the BC Rich, you know. It literally stayed at home. So like I wanted like just a sort of a workhorse working guitar kind of thing. So all right, okay, I'll see if oh, I know. You know, I swapped the Mockingbird for a Variax. Oh, seriously, I think at least a couple of times a year, I think, what did you do? What did you do? I just think, you know, and now I'm so like, don't sell your guitars. Just,
I regret if I've only ever sold a couple, but I always regret it. And that one's it's that kind of guitar where it's been in its case under the stairs for years, and I always think it's going nowhere. Like, it's there if I need it. And how many do you have?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the moment, but they're all actually 7 because there's one on the in production. I leave my spare guitar with production, so I don't have to carry as much gig to the car in one trip. But yeah, I mean, they're all kind of, one of those is a bass, but they're all, I don't have any, I don't have frippery guitars anymore. You know, everything is kind of like either job based or potential job based. You know, I do try and be as, depending on what job I'm doing, I try to be as respectful as possible in terms of my guitar choice. You know, so if I was playing a Motown gig, I'm not turning up with a BC Rich.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or like, you know, if I'm, you know, I don't know, so on the Queen gig, you turn up with a Brian May guitar, you know, that kind of thing. Just try to make sure that I'm appropriately equipped for whatever situation comes around, given the fact that I pretty much preclude myself from playing any kind of metal gigs or anything like that. So I have no metal appropriate guitars at all.
So are they all are they 6 like individually distinct guitars for something different, or have you got a few like backups?
Well, yeah, I've got some. Oh, actually, I missed. Yeah. So I've got Les Paul Strat, acoustic, a Brian May sort of one that I built, and then another Telecaster away and a bass guitar. So yeah, so on the Blues Brothers gig, I play my main telly, and then production carries for me a Telecaster that I put together, which will always functions as a spare. But if I'm going abroad, if we're flying, that I'll take that with me on a fly gig, because ultimately, the only thing of any value in it is the electronics,
Right.
which I put in. So my kind of mentality is, if the guitar dies, through carriage mishandling, I just take the electronics out and put it into another body and another neck, and it's all good kind of thing, But then, so if I'm out on a gig that's maybe, well, as my other telly's out with production, I typically, if I'm playing a telly gig, I typically take out a Strat as a spare. I will always take a spare out if I'm working, because nobody needs to be waiting for me to be changing a string halfway through a show. So this would be mental, actually. If I'm doing what I consider to be a telly gig, I'll take the Strat out as a spare. If I'm doing a Les Paul gig, I'll take the telly out as a spare. Which I don't know.
I get that.
You do get that. That's right.
They've just got that extra cut through, but they can cover the same kind of ground, I think.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. So when something falls out of your mouth and you think, "Oh my God, I've been getting this wrong," but no, I'm glad you.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It sort of makes sense to me.
I'm normally a Les Paul guy, but when I got the telly, I took it to our first rehearsal, and everyone started taking the piss because status quo is green.
Yeah, okay. Of course, yeah.
And actually, it did a really it because the other guy plays an SG, so it's 2 Gibson humbuckers. So I thought it just having a single coil was just.
Yeah. Did you find yourself? Did you feel like you sat better in the mix in the room?
I would always go back to my Les Paul because it's just where I'm at home with it. But it wasn't like taking a Strat and you think, oh, what's this? It fit right in.
I remember going away on a back in the Glitterati. We used to get sent to this country house to go and do writing sessions, which basically was us just getting pissed for a week, and playing in the swimming pool and playing pool and stuff. But the guy there had a relationship with Fender one day. So this is when I wanted, at that point, I wouldn't have dreamed of playing anything but a Les Paul, nothing but a Les Paul. I remember being given this Strat to just try, and he's like, "What is this comedy guitar? What is this little tinkly thing that you've given me?" Obviously now, it's just the right guitar for the right gig, innit?
Yeah, I mean, I have my first proper electric was a Strat, and I'll never part with it. It's a '94. I rarely play it, but it's one of those funny things that it's always the guitar that's nearest to hand, because like on the one hand, it's sentimental. It's my first guitar. It's a USA Strat. You respect it.
Oh wow, right on you.
And on the other hand, you're like, I got it secondhand for a birthday present, But on the other hand, you're just like, well, I don't mind so much if that one something happens to it. So it sits in the window on the stand,
Okay.
It's always in tune. It's always right there. So I'm very confident at home on it. But it's like, well, but the Les Paul guitar I'll take out. That's what gets written with. That's what goes to shows with.
Sure.
And then as you kind of get old and you think, oh, I appreciate them all for their own thing more, And I don't know how you find it, but like I find if I pick up a different guitar, it brings something different out of you. So when I pick up the Strat, it's like, let's put a clean channel and some reverb. But when I got the telly, I was like, all right, I need to play some country. So
Edge of Breakup.
And I'd never heard of this guy before, but there's a guy called Brad Paisley.
Oh yeah,
never heard of him, and he's got that song called "Nervous Breakdown." I thought, it's like some chicken picking kind of. So I'm thinking, and that's how I justified it. I thought, well, one, I didn't know this existed 2 weeks ago. Two, I certainly couldn't play it. So now I'm a better player having bought that telly.
Right on, right on. Yeah, fair play. No, I noticed a real big difference, you know, in how I play, and actually, having played in a weird way, having played Les Pauls for all those years, having had access to play other guitars, and now realise I prefer like the 25 plus inch scale guitars.
Right.
You know, it's only at the time I never really kind of got why I felt like Les Pauls looked small on me. Because obviously I'm 6'4", you know, so like I'm like, why do Les Pauls look small on me? Because the 24-inch, you know, I think the
You should get
24
them
inch.
off then. That's got the 24 frets.
Exactly. But like I think the telly's 25. I think 25. Is it 25 and a quarter? Something like that.
Yeah. Have you tried PRS? Because they're kind of in between.
No, I've never played one.
They're fun. I've got the one electric, and their scale length is bang in between Gibson and Fender.
Okay.
So it's a little bit slinkier than a Fender to bend, then it's a little bit stiffer. So it's got a unique tone going on too. They might be right up your street. I'll tell you tonally, because I always feel like with the Les Paul, you've got a tone and volume for each pickup, right? And I love that. I think anything other than that's a compromise to me now. But that PRS, it's got master tone, master volume like a telly, but it's a 5-way pickup selector. So it's got neck, middle, bridge, and then positions 2 and 4 are split.
Oh, really?
It covers so much ground.
So,
it
really
you
is your quack.
You can get the quack, you get the twang.
Oh, my days.
It's got its own distinct. The pickups are quite a modern voice.
Okay.
You kind of think if you had a gun to your head and you had to take one guitar to a gig that covered everything, you'd probably take that one.
Oh, really? Right.
And it's nice and light. The ergonomics are good on it. You'd probably. I'd recommend.
I'll go check one out. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm obviously aware of them and stuff like that, but it's that modern guitar thing in it again.
I don't think I could picture you on stage not with the telly now, to be honest, or your Les Paul, obviously. But I see.
I feel right at home with the tellies now, and actually, probably. Certainly in anger, I've now been playing the Telecaster longer than the Les Paul. Although played Les Paul. I was going to say through my childhood, but not through my childhood. Played Les Paul copies and then saved up all my Christmas money and birthday money, and then got my Les Paul when I was 15, and kind of just played that. And it's done some good miles for me, that guitar. It certainly doesn't owe me anything at all. But nowadays, it's just I love the no frills, no messing functionality of my telly. I play with the pickup switches a lot, so I really do utilize the full mileage that it can give me, basically. And I've never felt like I've never felt like I've missed out in any way on a gig, because that, I suppose, in a roundabout way I'm saying, it's never felt like the telly's been the wrong choice for the gig that I've put it on. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I have had that with Les Pauls, where you try to play something clean and it's like, don't matter which pickup I select, it's not going to give me the sound that I'm looking for.
It's funny because I think for a long time I did look down a little bit on Fenders, because I kind of think with the Gibson, they're almost like a work of art. They've got that carved top.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, that's just 2 bits of wood literally bolted together in it, And I said that as a Strat owner and stuff, and a Strat I'm not going to part with. And then, like I said, I've really come to appreciate it. And I bought the telly, and I think the thing with the tellies, and the Strat, but the Strat's got 3 pickups, and everyone talked about how versatile. But the telly looks like it should be quite doesn't do much. 2 pickups, 2 knobs, and that's it. But it does so much, and you kind of think there's a reason so many people use, big people use, and when they use them, they don't stop using them.
Absolutely.
Got one, Keith's got one, everyone's got one, and they stick with them. So if that's the other guitar, I can't fault you for that.
No, I appreciate that. And it's on the side, but I've got this one. My main tail is staring down the barrel of a refret, and I'm just like, I'm absolutely terrified, because obviously it's got 20 years playing in it, and kind of, the next just all the bumps and lumps are in the right places for my hands and stuff like that. And I'm just thinking, oh no, what's going? Because it is like, I mean, my text told me that's it. There's no more levels
Right.
going on this fretboard. It's done.
So the action's
Um,
going to change, presumably.
oh yeah, I think I remember when I got it. I remember liking it when I got it, but now it's just such an easy player now. It's
Like an
just
old
such
pair of
an
slippers now, is it?
yeah. It's like I remember years ago reading an article about I want to say it was a 1974 Les Paul Custom, but it was nicknamed the Ghost Fret because
Oh,
of
I've heard of that.
something. Yeah, so that, in a way, that's almost the way I feel about this telly now because it's just like there's well, maybe I am putting pressure on, but it's just such an easy player, and all I'm thinking is you get me full light frets back on that, and it's like it's going to be like a new guitar again, which I would imagine anybody that don't play guitar would be like, yeah, new guitar. But all I'm thinking is, oh no, oh no, is it going to do all the stuff that it used to do for me? So we'll see. But that's very. I mean, it's nervy enough for me considering um, just retiring this guitar outright and just buying a different one, which
Right.
I'm so worried about what it's going to do to this one. But we'll see. It's brought
Yeah.
up a horrible. I feel very anxious now.
Well, you could always just take the neck off and save it and put a new neck on, right?
Yeah, that is a fair point as well. Actually, that's possibly the better
Couldn't do
way
that
to
with
get.
your Les Paul. You have to unglue it all. And
I know. Well, that Les Paul that's done as well for that is because I don't play it. I don't play it out anymore. I only play it at home, so it's probably got years left in it. But if I was gigging it the way that I gig my Telecaster, that'd be a full refret, and that's. I'm happy to say that he's kind of semi-retired now. Just gets to sit in his stand looking cool and stuff
he
like
earned
that.
it, right?
Exactly, yeah. He's done me a job. He's definitely done me a job. The dents and I've managed to get most of the cigarette ash out of the cracks and crevices and stuff like that from back in the day. But yeah, that's cool.
I said about an hour ago that I'm conscious of your time, and we've just spent lots of time steady. So
Yeah, no worries, mate.
I'm going to let you go. But
Okay, buddy.
you're doing the Blues Brothers thing. Where can people find that?
Check us out on Facebook, the Chicago Blues Brothers. And I think if you Google search Blues Brothers UK, I think will be the top result there. But yeah, anything Chicago Blues Brother or Blues Brothers UK, ultimately I think you'll find us. I don't think I think we've seen off most people now.
Like I said, you're playing all over the country, which is nice.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. It's lovely. I've got zero complaints at all. I'm very happy with kind of my life as a musician now. The fact I get to go to these really nice gigs, play lovely rooms. I deal with really talented musicians who as it turns out, are all really lovely human beings. And I get paid at the end of the month like everybody with a regular job. I get to come home, just be a regular guy. I can, highly recommend were anybody to pursue something like what I do nowadays. I could certainly recommend it. But there's maybe takes a special sort of thing.
It's good to hear because I think your up and coming players, all you ever hear is get a proper job, get a stable job. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
See, I think you've got you got to be prepared to kind of take the rough and the smooth with it. And you'll just spend a lot of time looking for work and stuff like that, and then you spend a lot of time kind of, in buses or in vans or whatever. You could be traveling for 12 hours to play for 2 hours. But ultimately, I'm very very conscious of the fact that I make a living. In fact, I had a real absolute epiphany recently, and I remember it strikingly. It was an interval in the show, and I was walking back to stage, and it suddenly hit me. And I don't know why this had not hit me before, because I am conscious of it. But it really hit me. I make a living from my hobby. You know what I mean? And that really hit me. So to the point where it's like, I'm not going to gripe about being in the van for hours and hours and hours, and you know, being away from home and stuff like that. I'm in a very fortunate position, and obviously I've worked hard to get here and stuff like that. But you don't have to be, you don't have to think that you need to be in Coldplay, or you don't need to be Slash, or you don't need to be in a big band like that. You can make a living as a musician without necessarily the pitfalls that maybe the other side will offer you.
So yeah, that's very, very encouraging and motivating for people.
All right, mate.
Yeah.
Wicked. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's been a lot of fun again. As I said, I don't get to talk guitar, so it's been
No,
awesome.
mate, likewise. I only thought I'd keep you for about an hour. We've had 2. We could easily do 4.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure.
I might make you a stand-in feature in my diary, like Sundays.
I mean, yeah, like, okay, John, come and talk about yourself. Oh, well, if I must. No,
No,
it's been
great.
awesome,
Thank
Rich.
you,
I really appreciate it. Thank you.